What if I told you someone could obsess over you, watch you, learn everything about your life, and you'd still call it love? Not fear, not danger, love. That's what makes Joe Goldberg so disturbing, not just because of what he does, but because of how easily he convinces you he's right. And if you're honest, there are moments where you almost agree with him. Joe doesn't see himself as a bad person. He doesn't wake up thinking he's the villain. In his mind, he's the one who cares the most, the one who notices the small details, the one who's willing to go further than anyone else. And that's where it starts to get uncomfortable, because the most dangerous people don't think they're dangerous, they think they're justified. To Joe, love isn't just something you feel, it's something you prove. And the more you're willing to sacrifice, the more real it becomes. But at some point, that idea shifts. It stops being about the other person, and it starts being about control. Joe doesn't fall in love, he constructs it. He sees someone and slowly builds a version of them in his mind, a perfect version, someone who understands him, someone who fits exactly into the story he's already created. But real people don't stay perfect. They have flaws. They make choices he can't predict. They step outside of the version he created. And when that happens, Joe doesn't adjust the fantasy. He tries to control reality. That's the turning point. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Obsession doesn't feel wrong when you're inside it. It feels intense. It feels meaningful. It feels like you finally found something real in a world where everything else feels temporary. That's why people confuse obsession with love, because obsession is louder, stronger, more consuming. But it isn't love, it's possession. And this is where it gets even more disturbing, because people don't just watch Joe Goldberg, they root for him. They want him to win. They want him to be understood. And the reason is subtle. Joe feels human. He's calm, observant, emotionally aware. He notices pain in others, and he often chooses people who are already vulnerable. So your brain starts to justify him little by little because his intentions don't immediately feel evil. But intention doesn't erase behavior, and that's the line most people miss. Now, make this personal for a second. This isn't really about Joe anymore, it's about patterns. Have you ever checked someone's profile more times than you'd admit? Replayed conversations in your head, trying to figure out what they meant? Or felt like you cared more than they did and it bothered you more than it should? That feeling, that need for clarity, for connection, for control, that's where it begins. Joe isn't something completely different. He's what happens when those tendencies go unchecked, when boundaries disappear, when emotion turns into obsession, and obsession turns into justification. The most dangerous thing about Joe Goldberg isn't the violence, it's how normal he feels before it. He doesn't look like a threat. He looks like someone who listens, someone who remembers details, someone who makes you feel seen in a way most people don't. And that's exactly why someone like him can exist without being noticed, because we expect danger to look chaotic, unstable, obvious. But Joe is controlled, calm, patient, and that makes him harder to detect until it's too late. Joe Goldberg doesn't represent evil in the way people expect. He represents something much more uncomfortable, the blurred line between love and control, between caring and consuming, between wanting someone and needing to own them. So the real question isn't why he's like this. The real question is, at what point does love stop being love and become something else entirely? Because if you can't clearly see that line, you might not recognize it when you cross it.